coming out this morning. No service a little different this morning with me doing singing and doing the preaching and stuff, but hopefully I do okay at both. I'm not gonna say I'm definitely not going to be perfect at both, but hopefully I do all right at both of them. We'll be in Matthew chapter 4 this morning if you want to start turning there. And I've got you teenagers don't want to come up front, do you? Yeah, I didn't think so. Yeah, I thought I'd ask though. I thought this week, since the kids are up here, I'd give them a little challenge since I knew that they were going to be in service with us today. You guys want to come up here? All right, can you guys tell me the difference between these two sets of Legos? All right, what do you think, Emily? You think one's put together, the other one's not? How did they get put together? You think there's any other difference between two of them? I think they're all the same color. I'm not going to 100% guarantee they're all the same color, but I think they're all the same color. So I think you guys are on the right track. One's put together, so if you guys in the back can see here, I've got one that maybe it's a house. I don't know, little something that I built here that I could found Legos for here. And the other side, I've just kind of got a pile of all the same Legos here. So the kids think it's just that I put one together and the other one's not put together. All right, you guys can sit down. So Matthew chapter 4 and verse 18. And Jesus, walking by the Sea of Galilee, saw two brethren, Simon called Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishers. And he saith unto them, Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. And they straightway left their nets and followed him. Let's go to the Lord prayer this morning. Dear Lord God, our Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for everything that you do for us, dear Lord. Thank you for the wonderful service we've had so far, dear Lord. Pray that you'll be with me as I speak this morning, that you give me the words to say, that I'd say them the way that you'd have me to say them. Just let your will be done in this service, dear Lord. Watch over our church, dear Lord. Be with everyone that's here. Those who are unable to attend, dear Lord, touch each one in a special way. Be with us in everything we do. In your name pray. Amen. All right, here in Matthew, we got a very familiar set of passages here. We've picked a few verses out of this. Just, what I want to talk about this morning. And Phyllis, I was trying to come up with a title, and I never could come up with a clever title or anything. I'm just going to title the message Work this morning. All right? So we as Christians, and this is the audience we have this morning in our church service, I think pretty much all of us are Christians here, and we all have a work that we're called to do. Right? We all have something that we're called to do in some part of the ministry. And I just kind of want to use these verses to kind of talk through that as far as what different levels of work there are, what different levels of involvement there are in the church. Kind of setting up for when Brother Travis is going to be here next week, right? So where are we going to end up at for next week? Trying to get us encouraged for that when he comes and what we're going to be doing with revitalization, right? So I know several of you are retired. I'm not. Unfortunately, I'm not. Got a little way to go before I can retire. And my work that I do at the factory there, some days I go in and I'm excited. I'm going to go do something. I'm going to get a project done. I get excited about it, right? I'm going to go in there. I'm going to get this project done. I'm going to get things done, taken care of. And then some days I go in, I'm like, all right, I've got 50 of these boxes. I got to change the color of this slightly. I got to go in there and just, I do a lot of computer work. So I sit there and I change the color of a bunch of boxes. Does anybody care I change the color of the boxes? Probably not. There's a lot of things I do in my job that I do in the background that nobody has any idea that gets done. They don't even know it's happening. They really don't even care that's going on. They just really don't know that those things are getting done in the background, right? Us as working for God, though, we should take a different approach to that. We think of work as a negative kind of word. We think of work as being something, no, I really don't want to do work. I don't want to have to do work. We should be joy to go into the house of the Lord and do his work, to serve for him, because the Lord's done everything for us. The Lord has set us up for everything we need to do. He has set us up and where we need to be. The Lord is going to take care of us in everything we do. So I kind of want to give that little preface before we get started here. And I've got let me find my clicker. I forgot about it. Again, trying to think ahead for the kids and trying to make something they would keep up and remember. I found this little graphic and added to it as far as kind of keeping up with these steps so they can have a little thing to go along with as we go through these. So the first thing that we have here in Matthew chapter 4 and verse 18, and Jesus walking by the Sea of Galilee saw two brethren, Simon called Peter and Andrew his brother. The only way that Jesus found Simon and Peter, now he could have done it through divine finding them, right? But he knew that they were consistent. Jesus knew where they were going to be each and every day because they were consistent. The two brothers, they were always going to be out in the sea fishing because that's what they did. There wasn't a day where they came out there and said, well, I really don't feel like fishing today. I don't think I'm going to do it. Or they didn't say, I'm just going to take off a week from fishing and not do it. They had to be out there fishing. They had to be consistent. So the first thing that we're talking about this morning is attending, right? And this is mainly for the people that we're recording the sermon message this morning. This is mainly for the people that are watching. You guys here, you already got the first step done, right? You're attending, you're in service, you're being here, your presence being here has qualified you for the first step, if you will, this staircase that we got here. But this is mainly for the people that will be watching the sermon later, right? If you're watching the sermon and you're not here, the question I have is why not? Now, I know there's some people that have legitimate reasons. They have healthy reasons they can't be here. But for the others, why aren't you attending church? Attending church is the most basic thing you can do as a Christian, is come here and show up and be a part of this service. And I'll be honest, I think it was Sister Phyllis mentioned that I think it was even you were late to a service or something like that, but she mentioned that I feel like I missed out on something by not being there when I was willing to be there, right? And that's how I feel about church too. When I come to church, I'm excited to be here, to be in the house of the Lord. You might think I am, you might not realize it, but I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to see what God's doing. Last week when Sister Donna was singing, and I don't know what it was about the song that time when you were singing, Sister Donna, but I was sitting there, and the Spirit came over me, and I just had goosebumps all over me. I said, okay, I got to get this back under control, because I got to get back up there singing here a little bit. I got to get back where I can sing, right? But just coming to the house of the Lord should be something that's exciting for us. We shouldn't come here and feel like we're dying, sitting in the pew. We shouldn't come here wanting something else to happen. We should be here excited that the Lord is here with us, that His presence is with us, and we should be excited to be here. Right? And again, that's mainly for the people that aren't here today that maybe will watch the sermon later. But for you guys here, I'm hoping as you come to the church services, you're excited, that you're energetic about being here. Hebrews 10:25 states very clearly, and some people have this argument about, well, I can be a Christian and not go to church, right? We've all heard it, right? I can be a Christian and not go to church. Hebrews 10:25, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together. It's pretty hard to get around that. If you're a Christian, you should want to be in church and be involved in this church service and be here, right? So this past week, the kids, they did that memory verse from Psalms there. We went to VBS, our Brother Kevin and Sister Kim's church. It's out in Hoxie, you guys know where the church is at. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, right? So Kevin and Kim asked, if you guys are going to bring the kids over, would you care to help out with the VBS? So Teresa and I stayed and helped out with the VBS because there's not really anywhere else to go in Hoxie or Walnut Ridge to do anything anyway. But we got put in charge of the younger boys, so we got put over the kids Joseph's age and around the age, the preteen boys. We had about 9 boys that were in there. And, to watch the boys that were there, there's one kid that he would find a water bottle or a piece of plastic or his name tag, and he's over there munching away on that thing, just chewing away on whatever plastic he could find. Another kid's rolling around the floor, doing whatever he wants to do, that kind of thing. Another one's looking at stuff from the ceiling, and you would watch those boys, and you'd be like, I don't even know why their parents brought them. Like they just came here, they're just kind of being here. Until we got to class, and the teacher would ask these kids a question. And the teacher would ask a question, because we were doing Psalm 23 about the Good Shepherd and those kind of things. And the teacher would be like, well, what did we talk about last night with sheep? And those little boys, even though they were off in their own little worlds most of the time, we learned about this with sheep, we learned about this, there were these kinds of sheep and this kind of thing. And they would just start listing off these details from the lesson she'd done the night before. And it's just amazing the difference it made for those little boys just to be there. It may not seem like they're getting anything out of it, but just them being there made a huge difference, and I think it'll make a huge difference in their life for what they learned, right? Just attending the VBS there. We as Christians, when we're coming to a church service and we're going to start moving to the other steps of this, we have to be careful to not get comfortable. It's really easy to come in. It's really easy to grab your seat. It's really easy to come here to be a part of the service just by attending and then get comfortable with that. And if you look at the rich ruler in Luke 18:21, I'll flip over there real quick. And he said, all these I have kept from my youth. So this is the young ruler speaking, the rich ruler here. And he said, all these I kept from my youth. So he's responding back to Jesus here, saying that he's kept the commandments. He's been doing good. He's been doing the service, right? Now, when Jesus heard these things, he said unto him, Yet lackest thou one thing, sell all that you hast, and distribute unto the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven, and come follow me. And when he heard this, he was very sorrowful, for he was very rich. So here we have the young rich ruler here, and he's talking to Jesus. And Jesus had something that none of us have, is that Jesus was partly God, so Jesus could discern his heart. So Jesus could look at the rich ruler's heart and say, well, actually, yeah, he's done pretty good at keeping my commandments. He's done pretty good at keeping up with these things, right? But Jesus didn't condemn him for that. He didn't say, well, actually, you really haven't been keeping my commandments. You haven't been following after what I've been saying. Instead, Jesus proposed another problem to him. He gives him another thing to do. He gives him another step to do, right? And what does Jesus say? He says, take your riches and sell them. So us as Christians, we have to be very careful about getting comfortable like the rich ruler did and not wanting to take the next step and do the next work, get involved next day. So if you think about it in terms of like what I have for that illustration there, the young rich ruler, he had taken that first step, but when Jesus asked him to make another step, he just stayed there. He didn't want to move up to the next one. He didn't go up the rest of the way of the staircase. Matthew 4:19, he said unto them, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. The next thing that Jesus asked the disciples to do as he's calling them was to learn. So after you've been attending service for a while, you've been a part of the church for a little while, just coming and being here, the next thing you have to do is learn. You're not going to go very much further and always build on each other. You have to first be a part. The next thing you have to do is learn. You have to learn more about the Lord. And the easiest way to do that, take Sunday school. Come to Sunday school class, be a part of that, listen to what teacher has to say. Brother Rob did an excellent time preaching this morning on Isaiah, talking about the prophet Isaiah and when he was called. Just come and listen to the messages and see what God says. And especially as being a teacher, you'll learn a lot being a teacher. You learn a lot also by being a student. Just being there, being present, learn what they have to say. Take part in Bible studies, do personal Bible reading, just in general, learn doctrine. If you're not going to take the time to learn God's word, it's just going to be hard for you to move further. It's going to be hard for you to get further along just because you're not going to have the knowledge to answer the tough questions that come along. Because I guarantee you, and similar with the VBS, the little kids there sometimes they pop up a question and it's like, that's a really deep question that little kid asked, and the teacher would kind of move on and keep going because it's really deep, right? Because I think when she was talking about the Garden of Eden, and one of the boys asked, well, what if they had never sinned? It's like, ooh, that's a tough question there. She moved on and kept kind of ignored the kid and kept going because like that's a very deep theological question that you're going to have a really good answer for to respond back to that kid. So the disciples here, when Jesus called them, he said, follow after me, because Jesus wanted them to learn from him and his example in order to be able to bear witness to the other people that were around them, right? 2 Timothy 2:15 says, study to show yourself approved. You have to study in order to be able to prove that what you know to God. Eventually, you're going to be in heaven, and God's going to ask you, what were the words that I said? I want to hear the words that I said to you so that he can hear them back. God loves to hear his own word repeated back to him. After you've learned, the next thing we have is serving. Matthew 4:20, and they straightway left their nets and followed him. So the disciples here, as they're called, they're doing the work of fishing. And I've never done the kind of fishing they're doing with the big nets. Brother Rob talked a little bit about this morning with his Sunday school class. But can you imagine having these massive nets, these heavy nets that you're throwing off the side of a boat? They've got weights on them. You're throwing those out the side of the boat. You're grabbing these fish in and trying to manually drag them back in because they didn't have electronics back in those days. They didn't have motors to pull them in. They're dragging these heavy fish back on the boat. They're throwing the boat. They smell. They're terrible. You got to clean them. You got to do all this stuff with these fish. And can you imagine when Jesus comes up to them and says, hey, you want to go with me? It might have sounded like a really easy job to them, right? They may have been like, oh, this fishing thing is really, I'd rather not be fishing. I'll follow after you, right? But on the other hand, the disciples, and you got to think about from their side, that's all they knew. That's all that they knew at the time was fishing. They're going to do a full 180 here to fishing for men for Jesus, right? So they had no idea what they're getting involved in. We had a gentleman that left our work here recently that I was kind of talking to him, and I was like, are you concerned at all about leaving? He's like, well, I was at first, but I've kind of gotten over it. I was like, well, are you concerned all about going to the new place? Because when you move from job to job, you lose a little bit of a sense of what you knew before going to something new, right? It's always a little scary, the new things, what do you got to learn, what do you got to figure out, the new environment, how people interact with each other, all those kind of things. I figure they had the same kind of fears here when they're leaving what they knew as far as fishing. They had a little bit of fear of what they're going to be doing. But they were called, they answered the call, and then they started serving. In our church, we have a bunch of people that I'm very blessed as the deacon to say that are in this role of serving, at taking part in our church, at doing different services, whether that be decorating, doing the lawn, playing music. We have a ton of people here that are dedicated to serving, and it is such a blessing that you're willing to do that and take the time out of your lives to do that. And it is very much appreciated. We are all equipped in some form or fashion to serve. Now, you may say, well, Brother Kendall, I have this reason that I can't serve. I have this reason that I can't do this. Again, tying back to VBS, when we would get there early for VBS, and there were a couple of older ladies, I'd say 70s, 80s, something like that, somewhere in that range, that they were just having the time of their lives over there fixing the snacks for the kids. And physically, they wouldn't be able to do a whole lot of things physically, but they were having a blast putting together these little snacks for the kids. And the first night, they had taken a little donut, just one of the little bitty donuts. They stuck 4 pretzels in the bottom of it to give it legs, took a little bit of icing and put a face on it and made a little sheep out of it. And had these little sheep set up and, prepped 40 or so of these little sheep ready to go for the kids. And, I mean, they were just having a blast putting this together, just a wonderful time serving the Lord and what they were doing. 1 Peter 4:10, as every man hath received a gift, even so minister the same one to another as good stewards on the manifold graces of God. So we are called by God in order to serve one another and to help each other and to take care of each other. Matthew 4:19, Jesus' call, I will make you fishers of men. So the last and final step that we have on this is discipleship. And each one of these build on each other. You can't get to discipleship and say, well, now that I'm discipling people, I don't have to attend. Now that I'm discipling people, I don't have to learn. Now I'm discipling people, I don't have to serve. They all build on top of each other. You have to be continually attending. You have to be continually learning. You have to be continually serving in order to be able to disciple. If you're trying to skip and go to discipleship, you're going to get in a spot where, well, I'm discipling now, but you know what? I never learned about this. I'm discipling now, but I don't have a good witness because I'm not attending. It doesn't work that way. You can't just skip a bottom rung, get rid of it, and still have a staircase. You have to have the bottom rungs in order to get to the top and keep having the top there. So Jesus here, when he called the disciples, he called them to be disciples. He called them to be disciple makers in order to disciple to other people. And they're going to do that. As Jesus calls them, they're going to go out and reach out to other people. We all know how they reach out to other people, how they end up starting the church, essentially. How they influence others, follow after Christ. We have several people here that also do the role of discipling. It's hard to classify some of these. You might think of teaching as being something that's just service, but really teaching in itself is discipling. I appreciate all the people that work on Wednesday night, on Sunday morning, the Sunday service in order to teach the kids, to teach each other. I think that's a form of discipling. The one that we have trouble with is discipling when we go outside the church, right? We have a lot of people that do discipling within the church. It's when it gets to discipling outside the church when we struggle sometimes, because sometimes as Christians, we have this idea that it's us versus the world, right? We have this idea that if we go out and try to disciple people, that somebody's going to try to get us. And that's not the way we should be. We should be out there discipling. We should be out there trying to convince people to follow after Christ. If there's a consequence that they don't like us anymore, dust the feet off your shoes and move on, right? I really think Brother Travis is going to hit really hard on this point. I don't know what he's going to speak on particularly, but I think he's going to hit hard on this point of us just going out and speaking to people. There's going to be times where it's going to be hard. There's going to be times where you're going to have conversations with people where it goes absolutely nowhere. There's going to be times where you get involved with somebody, you think it's going to be the best thing ever, and it just doesn't turn out. But just dust the feet off your shoes and keep on doing it. It's what we need. It's what God commanded us to do. It's what we need to do. Matthew 28:19. Go therefore and attend church. It's not exactly what it says there. Go therefore and volunteer. It's not quite what it says there either. Go therefore and make disciples. All right. So in Matthew 28:19, God's calling us there to go therefore and make disciples. So when you're out and you're looking at the work that you have to do. If you're, again, picturing this as a staircase that I've kind of got up there in that drawing up there. The other part of this is not really, I'm going to say, a staircase on this, but when you're going up the stairs, you kind of get to one stair and then, well, some of us may, but you get to one stair and you stop there and you're like, yep, I'm just going to stay on this stair. This is where I'm going to stay from now on. Right? Or do you get up a couple stairs and you decide, well, you know what, I'm just going to stay here. I'm not going to go all the way to the top, right? And we look at the scripture we have here, and this is kind of a bonus point in here. 4:20, straightway, and they straightway left their nets, right? The same kind of deception that unbelievers have is the same deception that the devil tries to use on Christians, right? And that's the deception of time, right? It's really easy for an unbeliever to say, well, I would like to get saved, but I'm going to wait till a different time to do it. I'd really like to come to church, but I've got this other thing going on. The devil tries to use the same deception on Christians, right? And that is, I would like to get involved in the ministry further, but whenever it's convenient for me. I would like to get involved in this part of service, but at a different time. Here in 4:20, the disciples were called, and they immediately left. They didn't take time to think about it. They didn't take time to hesitate. They immediately took part in what Jesus was calling them to do. As I was thinking about this message, the thought of prayer came into my mind, right? And where does prayer fall in all this, right? You could say that prayer might be a part of serving. You might say prayer is a part of attending. I really think prayer is more so all the black that you see on the outline. You need prayer in every step that you go. It doesn't matter where you are in your Christian walk. It doesn't matter if you're just attending. It doesn't matter if you're even not attending. You got to have prayer involved. You got to have a communication with God, and that makes up the whole thing. As you're learning, as you're serving, as you're just doing discipleship, prayer has to be involved in every part of it. It doesn't really fit in any category. It's more like a fuel. It's the fuel that makes you go up the stairs. It makes you go further as you're going up it. So in these verses we have here, Jesus called some fairly ordinary gentlemen, right? They were fishermen. They weren't scholars. They weren't Bible knowledge experts. They were just regular fishermen, right? Called them to do some extraordinary work with a very simple call. If you read on further in the passage, he does it again. He does it the second time where he just calls some regular fishermen out, asks them to come follow him, and they do it. They follow after him, right? And really it's through 4 simple steps: attending faithfully, serving, learning, and doing discipleship. Not everybody's at a level 4. Not everybody's doing discipleship, but everybody should be at a certain level, and everybody should be looking at what can I do next? How can I grow? How can I move further? So that you're not stuck like the rich ruler was, right? Don't be like the rich ruler and get stuck in a certain spot and be comfortable there and stay there forever. Luke 10:2, therefore said he unto them, the harvest truly is great, but the laborers are few. Pay ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, they will send forth laborers into the harvest. There's a lot of work to be done. Or, at the beginning of service, I talked about the freedoms that we have as a country to be able to come and serve. And for us, those are blessings, right? Those are blessings that we can do that. And with that, those freedoms also come as a little bit of a curse, because the people of the world also have freedom to do whatever they want to, right? And as time goes on, it seems like those freedoms get to where they're leaning more towards the world's freedoms than what Christian freedoms have, right? So there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of us that need to be stepping up to do the work in order for that to be accomplished. 1 Corinthians 15:58, therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, forasmuch as you know the labor is not vain in the Lord. I talked about some of my work at the factory and that kind of stuff, and sometimes I go into work and I leave work and I'm like, did I really do anything? Did I really accomplish anything? Did I make a difference in my workplace? And sometimes you can feel like that when you're doing work for the Lord. You can feel like you're stuck at something. You feel like, well, does anybody really care that I've done this? Does anybody really notice that this is getting done? And honestly, the people of the church may not notice. There's people in the church that may not notice what you've done. I want you to know that it's appreciated. We just may not notice it. But the Lord notices. The Lord notices. The Lord appreciates it. The Lord appreciates everything we do. And that's kind of what I was wanting to get out of 1 Corinthians there in 15, is that everything we do for the Lord is not for vain. Right? Every work that we do, every service that we do for the Lord is not in vain. It's for a greater purpose. So are you attending? Are you learning? Are you serving? Are you helping someone else follow Jesus? Whatever your answer, God doesn't ask you to compare yourself to someone else. He's asking you to take the next step. I don't think I need to do an invitation this morning. I don't think I need to. I would like for us all to come up this morning and just have a time of prayer. If you're able to go to the altars, I'd appreciate it. If not, just let's have a time together as a church to pray, both for our community, for our church, prayer requests that we have, everything. So I'd just like to have a quiet time of prayer if we could. I don't feel like we've been doing that enough, and so I'd like to do that at the end of the service today. And then after that, I'll have a couple announcements.